What's good, everybody? It is your boy Kev, and you are tuning in to another beautiful episode of Andromeda. Today, I have a very special guest. We have Adam Mcbride in the building. He is considered the NFT archaeologist in the NFT space. Adam, without further ado, tell us who
Kev,
you are and what you do.
thanks so much for having me, man. Oh my God, my dogs, man. I apologize for that. Man, this is what happens when you work at home, right? It's the blessing and the curse of modern technology, man. All right.
Yeah.
And I mean, the way it wraps into NFTs is, like this modern tech, what the NFT represents. And we are so fortunate. I feel so fortunate to be in this space at this time, because what we are is we're the pioneers. NFTs are going to be embedded in every single person in the world's life in 20 years.
Wow.
Most people don't realize that. It's going to be ubiquitous everywhere. We might not even call them NFTs. It just might be the way things are. And we're here right at the start. And so it's been a real pleasure for like the last 6 months. What I've done is I've gone back and looked at the history of NFTs all the way from the early beginnings in 2014 and tried to tell that story of how NFTs have grown and evolved from the early beginnings in 2014 in Namecoin and Bitcoin to what's considered the modern NFT now on Ethereum, which I am quite certain will change over time. And in 5 years, we'll be talking about a whole new NFT paradigm. But it's really fun to be able to tell that story.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot we got to dive into in itself. But I'm going to start off with, when did you get your first NFT, Adam?
My first experience, like when I actually pushed the button, got the MetaMask and all that sort of stuff, was early this year, maybe February.
Okay.
A guy on Twitter wanted to take his music. He literally put out a tweet. I have all these songs. I'd like to, put out one of my albums as an NFT to raise money for Sloan Kettering Cancer Institute. And I was like, he's like, can anybody do this for me? I don't know how to do it. And I'd never made one or done anything like it. But I immediately, this was like I was having my coffee at 6 a.m. in the morning. I immediately wrote back, yes, I can do it. And he was like, great, thanks so much. And so then for the next, 4 hours or whatever, I went down the process of how do I get a MetaMask? How do I get ETH in the MetaMask? How do I, get on OpenSea, create an OpenSea account, mint an NFT? How do I take his image, his music, which is stored on SoundCloud, and put it on IPFS? And what is an NFT, how it all works, I figured it out over that like 4-hour period and minted the NFTs for the guy, right? I'm, we were talking about learning before we started the show. That's the way I learn, which is by doing, right?
Okay.
And so by doing, that got me in the space. And then the big one for me was the Mooncat rediscovery. And the Mooncat rediscovery, and then immediately after that, Curio cards and Etheria. That got me completely hooked on the space.
So before we dive deeper into that, I want to know, so why vintage NFTs? Did you just kind of discover Mooncats, or how did that go about where decided to focus on that?
When Mooncats dropped on that day, when Harry BTC was like Mooncats, and I went down his little thread on how to mint the Mooncat and buy the Mooncat or whatever, or it was actually die-aping on that one, or I can't even, it's so confusing. I don't even remember who's who on Twitter, but whoever talked about the Mooncats, I think I might be confusing Curio cards with Mooncats because they were within like 24 hours of each other.
Yeah.
But when that Mooncat drop happened, and they were there, and all you had to do was pay the minting cost, I was completely hooked. Completely. It was like, for me, it was a mix of so many different amazing things. It's this idea of like treasure hunting. Finding gold buried in the earth,
100%.
where it was just, look, these treasures are sitting there. All you have to do is find them.
Yeah.
And so Mooncats on that day, like solidified it. And then Curio cards literally happened the next day. And I was like, oh my God, there are all these projects out there that people are extremely interested in and have value.
Yeah.
And they're just sitting there. They're just waiting for me to rediscover them.
How did you find Curio cards?
Curio, I think actually that was the one with Harry BTC on Twitter. Somehow popped up and was like, hey, this is how you go and mint the Curio cards. The thing was with Curio, and I didn't have much ETH. Like when I started with ETH doing that like first little project, I had, one ETH, maybe half an ETH. No, like there was no Adam starting with 20 ETH, right? I had no money. It's $1,000 or $1,500 of ETH. And when Curio happened, the Curio cards, I got there late. Like a guy DM'd me, was like, dude, go now. They're almost all gone. And I got there and it was like card 10 was available. It was like the only one available. And I looked at the contract. By that time I knew how, because I learned the day before how to like look at a contract. Yeah. And I looked and I saw that there were 100,000 cards of the Curio card number 10. And yeah, they were only like $5 each to mint. But I was like, dude, at 100,000, that puts this as like, I don't even know, a lot. Like, you know, I was like, these seem crazy. Like these aren't even going to be worth $5. Yeah. Right. So my stupid brain.
Oh man.
Said, I didn't even buy any, dude.
Oh man.
I bought 0 Curio cards on the rediscovery because my stupid brain was like, oh, these aren't even going to be worth $5.
Wow.
Right? I mean, I could have very, very, very easily bought, you know, 100 or 200 on that day. I mean, literally that was at least a $200,000 or $300,000 mistake.
Wow.
On that day.
Wow.
But that's just one of many, man. If you've been in the NFT space, you get used to that, man. I got about 40 of those ones.
Yeah, that's the name of the story in this game.
That's the game, man.
Yeah, that's the game. For me, I just got into NFTs in August. I've been learning about it since the end of last year. I've been learning about it a little bit, but I never pulled the trigger because I always felt like it could potentially be a bubble. And then Curio was the first the first NFTs I actually got because of the historical significance of it. I was like, if I'm going to purchase anything, this is the most safe and affordable at the moment that I could purchase. You know, I couldn't afford a Punk or Ape or whatever. So I was like, this is my best bet. And it's proving to be correct. Right. So what I want to know, Adam, as well is how do you find these projects? You know, are the creators kind of reaching out to you? Are you reaching out to them? How does that process work?
That's changed over time. Back in April and March of this year, what we were doing was literally going into Google and doing like time-based searches. So we were searching for not really NFT because NFT wasn't really used as a term back then, but art, blockchain, and then filtering by date, right? That's the way I was doing it. And literally tabbing through, 50 tabs on Google. That's literally how I was searching back then. And that's the way we found a couple back then. We found a lot, but what we were looking for back then was Curio cards. We were looking for a website, which if it didn't work, it showed the art. Yeah. Right. And we were looking for the NFT to then be basically free or close to free to mint. And so we could have this kind of aping procedure take place. Right. So we were looking for that model, like the Curio model or the Mooncat model. We were looking for that. Right. So I'm telling you, we passed on so many projects that now have gone completely, rocket ship to the moon. Wow. I mean, we passed on Ether Lambos. Ether Lambos at that time in early March or late April, the website wasn't working. You couldn't see any of the art. And we were like, well, what is it? I mean, it was basically free. We could have had them for free in early March, bro. And but we passed. Ether Rocks. Dude, Ether Rocks, actually, it's one of my biggest disappointments because the fact was I only had maybe at that time, maybe 1 ETH in my wallet, right? And the rocks, there were rocks for sale for like half an ETH, and the website worked. You could see the 100 rocks right there. Yeah. And there were ones for like half an ETH, 0.75 or 1 ETH. I can't remember the exact amount. But I could have had a rock or two right then. And I passed on it then. And then in early or mid-July, somebody was like, what about the rocks? And I was like, nah, screw the rocks. Passed on it again.
Screw the rocks.
Passed on it twice. So, tack it on the list. I have zero question. If I started with $50,000 in ETH in early April and I just bought everything I'd be worth $50 million today.
Wow.
Zero question. Zero question. But I didn't know, hindsight and lack of funds. So
why do you think the rocks went so parabolic? Is it simply because of the historical significance?
No, I think it's the memeage of it. The meme potential of it is great. And then it's super limited supply. The 100 is like a perfect number for this ultimate rarity. And what you can have happen from a market perspective is basically you have only a couple of holders of those ETH rocks. And as long as they don't paper hand and try to jump forward on each other, they can basically set the market. Wow. And we're seeing it right now. There's a card. This is kind of like high level. And for most people, this is not going to be possible for them. But there are early NFTs on a blockchain called Namecoin. Okay. And so the first NFT, what is generally considered the first NFT, was minted on Namecoin, sold for like $1.7 million recently. So, but there are other ones on there, and some of those right now are owned by only a couple of people. There are ones, for example, it's called a Twitter egg, right? And these Twitter eggs, they minted about 200 of these. So when Twitter was originally started, rather than give you, when you first sign up for Twitter, now it's kind of the outline of a person kind of grayed out. That's what they give you as your default icon. But back in the old days, it was actually an egg.
Yeah, I remember.
And those eggs had like a background of a different color. Some were blue, some were red, some were green, this sort of stuff. Well, somebody, potentially Twitter, which would make it a much more interesting story, minted like 200 of these things as NFTs with all these varying colors and varying rarities on Namecoin in 2014, 2015. But basically, 3 people in the world own all of these. But they've been slowly selling them to collectors over the last 2 months. And the starting price is, 12 ETH. Top price is like 75 ETH.
Wow.
Right. So those are happening right now, with collectors who much like me share this idea of they're not making any more earlier ones. Right. So early, historically significant NFTs on this kind of timeline of NFTs are going to hold tremendous value over time. Okay.
So now that you kind of mentioned that, I feel it's right to ask, how do you feel about the counterparty NFTs, the Spells of Genesis, the rare Pepes? I actually grabbed a couple of rare Pepes because it was, it's early, so
sure.
How do you feel about those?
I think they're historically very significant. And the only thing is with them really, there are 2 things. The first was access, right? Up until Emblem Vault recently, it was basically, I was not recommending it to anybody on social to buy Pepes. Why? Because it was complex. You had to have experience and knowledge, and you could still get ripped off.
Yeah.
Because the way it worked on Bitcoin, if you were in Counterparty for those who don't know, it's basically a wallet. It's like kind of MetaMask for Bitcoin. But in Counterparty and for like rare Pepes, or if you wanted to buy Pepes or Spells of Genesis, you had to basically confirm that the person or the vault that you were sending money to had the rare Pepe. So that was a technical issue. And then you had to send the money to that vault, and it had to beat somebody else sending it to that vault. So like a friend of mine who was buying these things at the time said, look, man, it's really easy. All you got to do is check to make sure it's there. Then triple the gas that you would normally pay and then send it. And I'm like, well, what happens if I'm second? He's like, well, you lost the money and you didn't get the card. And I'm like, well, dude, that's not what I signed up for when I'm into blockchain. I'm into transparent, guaranteed transactions. Right?
Yeah.
So I didn't recommend it, until very, very recently with the advent and the evolution of Emblem Vault.
Yeah.
And so now I do recommend it because I think Pepes and certainly Spells are very, very historically significant. They play a large role in the history of NFTs.
Which one do you favor more, Spells or Pepes?
That's really a personal preference. I mean, yeah. I like age, but the reality is Pepes, I see Pepe memes every single day.
Yeah.
Right. Pepes are so embedded in our culture that for me, that holds more value. But the thing is, as you know, there are Pepes with 1 billion cards, right? I mean, there's literally ones which have basically infinite supply. So you really have to dig in and find the ones that you believe are going to be kind of meme worthy or from a collector's sense, be the ones that win based on supply and memeability and collectability. And that's complex, right? Because that's what makes it fun. I'm certainly no expert at that. You can dive into one of those Discord groups and find out the complexity, and they're very complex.
Yeah, very complex. To me, that's what makes Pepes pretty fun. So I'm going to move forward just a little bit because you're involved in a lot of these projects. And I want to know from your perspective, what does it take to make some of these projects that you rediscover And even new projects, what does it take to make those projects successful?
It's really challenging, to be honest.
Yeah.
It was easier when a lot was not discovered, and you could actually have the pick of projects that were kind of ready to go and ready to relaunch. But the reality is now to find old projects now. What I'm working on now and working on with my team and friends of mine is basically find projects that have problems with them, and then fixing those problems. We just did it recently, like with Pixel Maps, and Ken, the developer of Pixel Maps, is a great project from 2016. But it had a problem that when he initially launched it, it was hard coded into the contract that each one of the pixels was 2 ETH, right? Well, that was only $20 in 2016, right? Today it's $7,000, right?
Yeah.
So, we had to fix that. And, so we basically created a buy. And so basically he was buying the pixels from himself and then relisting them, right? And so that, those sort of challenges are almost every old project now has those challenges. And Pixel Maps wasn't even that bad. I've run into ones that were even more difficult than that. But beyond that, the thing that I think even new projects have to do is when somebody buys their project, whatever it is, even an avatar project, excuse me, the thing is those people who buy those NFTs immediately have to feel like they made money. Like whatever they just bought, whether it's a frog or a toad or an ape, must immediately feel like what they bought is worth more. And that is for example, because I advise just regular artists who are dropping NFTs all the time. I tell them, look, you have to price this so well that what you're doing is you're attracting collectors because they feel like the moment they bought this, they're like way more than whole, right? If you can create that feeling, what you've done is you've started a community that immediately feels great, that doesn't have to worry, right? Because their NFT is more valuable than what they paid for it immediately.
Yeah.
And what you've done then is on a large like avatar drop, you've created a giant Discord with happy people, right? The worst thing you can do from an artist perspective or avatar perspective is drop something that is right on that line of, is it worth that or not? Right? Because if it's on that line, first of all, people aren't going to buy it. They're not going to ape in, which means a slow launch, which means they're not really happy. And then what you're going to get immediately in the Discord is you're going to get, why aren't you marketing this? Why aren't we pumping this? Right? And that's not the way you want to start. You want to start by making people feel like they really got a thing of value and got it on the cheap.
So that's great advice. Do you feel like all old historical projects from 2014 to I would say 2018 will have value in the future? Or do you feel like these guys need to continue to market and build community so they can have value in the future? What's your perspective on that?
My perspective is not, if you take out 2018, I think there are so many projects in 2018 that the ones in 2018 are going to have to work 100%. Because there are, I mean, I think I did a Twitter poll and the general public thought there are going to be maybe 30 projects in 2018. I would lean more to 130 projects in 2018. There are a lot of projects in 2018. So I think those ones are going to need to like really create value for their holders, continue to kind of grow, or at least use what I put out an article the other day, interoperability, right? So if you had for example, an old avatar project in 2018, right? How are you pushing as the team lead or the developer to get those avatars used in other NFTs or games or in society or socially, right? How are you working to build awareness around that project, right? So I think that's important, certainly for 2018 projects. As you get older and older, let's just say Pixel Maps in 2016.
Yep.
I don't believe they need to do a whole lot because it's so time-wise, it's so historically significant that it almost doesn't matter. Now that said, poorly run teams or poorly run projects will have a much lower valuation than well-run projects.
Okay.
So for example, Mooncats, they're run by a great developer. Those guys are awesome. Socially, they're awesome. They work with the community to build and build and build and build all sorts of new features and functionality, maintaining the core of this is a 2017 NFT. And I think those sort of communities will be just spectacularly rewarded over time. I think one thing that's exciting and potentially has value is this idea of potentially a DAO as an investment vehicle for people who know me and believe in what I believe to buy up older projects and to look to long-term hold. Like we're looking at, okay, 15, 20-year hold on these projects because our vision, my vision that I share with a lot of people is, what's this gonna look like in 20 years when every single person on earth understands what an NFT is, and you're looking at a 2016 or 2015 or 2014 project, and you're saying, wow, this was really important on the steps to get to modern NFTs. I think there's going to be a lot of value to be unlocked there.
Okay.
And if you think about it, you think about the number of people who actually own an NFT, it's so small as to be like, it's basically a large town right now.
Yeah.
Owns NFTs in the world. It's like 100,000 people own an NFT.
Wow.
It's so tiny that, I mean, we're in the space, and so we're hearing it and getting bombarded every day. We think the whole world knows about it. Trust me, nobody knows yet. Nobody knows. Literally every single one of my friends, and these are people with money and success, and they're asking me, well, how do I buy one? Can I use my credit card? That's where we are. We're at the babies. We're not even, if it's a baseball game, the dudes aren't even out of the locker room yet.
Wow.
That's where we are.
Yeah. And the biggest question I get always is, why would I pay that much for a picture? So that's how I know we're still super early in this process. So I want to talk about the future a little bit. In the beginning of this video, you said NFTs will be everything, So what does your future of NFTs and this technology look like to you?
Well, I'll preface it by saying this. Every single person's vision in the world right now is wrong. 100% wrong.
Yeah.
There's no possible, if history tells us anything, it tells us all you got to do is look at the internet. Nobody in 1997, and I mean 0 people out of 6 billion people, predicted what we have now. 0.
100%. Yeah.
0 people. Because it was impossible. The idea that I could have a complete production studio right here was impossible to even fathom for people.
Yeah.
And so the idea that we would all be producers and content creators, and nobody got that. I mean, look through the blog posts or whatever. Nobody in the world got that. 0. So what's going to happen with Web3 and NFTs? I don't know. I just know it's going to be massive. And I'm 50 years old. I've never been more excited about a space.
Wow.
I believe it's going to be amazing. And I truly believe that. And I'm working with teams. For example, we're building a decentralized music platform with Amplify Art. You saw what happened with artists. I'm sure NFT artists who never thought they'd be able to make a living doing graphical art on digital art, right?
Yeah.
Never thought they were going to be able to do that. They were working at Adobe making logos, right? And now they're a digital artist and they make a living at that. It's a miracle, right? I think music is next. Like this idea we have right now in the music industry that literally the sliver of the 1% of the 1% make it and nobody else can make a living in music. That's about to get completely disrupted.
Wow.
Because if you can access your fans directly through NFTs and make money directly with a small group of fans through NFTs, it's a game changer. It's a game changer. There are literally tens of thousands of musicians who will be able to make a living selling their music on NFTs. And I'm super excited about that. I think that's the next step for artistically how NFTs are going to be used in our society.
Love it. So you mentioned you're super excited. This is the most excited you've ever been about something. How does this feel different to you compared to the early 2000s and the early internet days?
I guess the thing that's different is this is just for me, the idea of blockchain and the potential for lack of gatekeepers is what keeps it super exciting. right? Everybody knows, and you and I know that in 1997, big players and big money are going to kind of control everything.
Yeah.
Right? And they still do, right? YouTube is the most powerful. I mean, Google, sorry, I should say, is the most powerful company in the world, right?
100%.
Because they control the information, right? This has the potential for change. And what blockchain technology does is it has the opportunity for this kind of more distributed ownership of the web. And that's exciting because what's happened, and not that it's I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I look at it as an evolution. So Web 2.0 is amazing, dude. This is amazing. I'm talking to you. We're a million miles away from each other. We're live having a show. This is amazing, right?
Yeah.
Thank God for this. I just think that the potentials for the next step are as or more exciting, which is hard to believe, right? I mean, you're young, so you don't see the full picture. I see the full picture. I remember what it was like in 1985.
Yeah.
Right? This is a way better world, and I can't wait for how it's going to be better in 20 years from now. It's going to be insane.
Yeah. But before we get off this thing, Adam, I want to know, what are some of your favorite projects right now that you believe in the team, you believe in the community, and that you think will have potential long-term success? And this is not financial advice, of course.
From the old traditional, projects, they're funny. They're ones like, we talked about Pepe's, right?
Yeah.
Pepe's doesn't necessarily have a team, right? Pepe's, in a sense, is kind of the perfect version of Web 3.0, which is just a bunch of people made stuff, right? And so I don't think you necessarily have to look at a team, but so like certain ones like that, I think age and provenance is the key thing. The team almost doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Certainly when you get into 2017 projects, absolutely love Mooncats. I've talked with their developer on a podcast. Fantastic. The way they run their community and everything is absolutely fantastic. Certainly Curio. It's just Curio cards from what they did in 2017 was so visionary. So visionary. It's going to be talked about forever. For the rest of my life, it will be talked about. Because what they did, I mean, they were trying to do a startup, right? You get that, right? They had a startup. They were pitching investors in 2017, which was funny, right? But the idea they had, which is if we are able to put art on the blockchain, the artists themselves are going to be able to get recurring revenue on every sale in the future forever. Mm-hmm. That idea, which was kicked around on BTC, on Bitcoin, and people were trying to get it working before them. There were a lot of people trying to get it working, but they were the first to really do it.
Yeah.
And for that, Curio is really a visionary project. Of course, Travis, Mad Bitcoins are fantastic people, and all the artists there, I'm friends with all of them. They're just such a great group of people. And so it's super enjoying to see the success that they've had. I think there's no question that Curio is going to hold a lot of value over time.
Yeah, I'm excited for the October 1st auction.
It's going to be great, man. It's going to be so fun. We're going to do some live shows and stuff around it. I think I look at that just to give kind of context, like what we're talking about like NFTs and the integration of NFTs in society. If you think about it, those old gatekeepers like Christie's or Sotheby's, they still hold a place in our society and in our shared belief of something, right? So when you say, oh, is this art, right? People might be like, no, it's not. It's just a rare Pepe. But if it shows up at Sotheby's, that means the people at Sotheby's say it's art, right? And that makes a difference, a big difference still in our society.
It gives it more value.
So it's
the perception
of it.
Yes.
So it's this idea. It's almost like what we're talking about with NFTs in general. It's this step up. It's just stepping into a new paradigm where curios are going to be at Christie's. Curios now are kind of locked in as this historically important project, and it's great to see.
Beautiful. Any final thoughts you want to leave the audience with?
I'd say this. If you're just listening to this about NFTs just today, and this is your first time hearing about NFTs, congratulations. You are early, very early. You are. And it's hard to believe because we've had such an incredible run over the last 6 months. I mean, it's been an incredible run for me personally, for I know 24 people who've never experienced anything like this in their lives, complete success. And it's fantastic to see. But if you are just listening today, understand that you are one of a handful, probably less than 250,000 people in this world who actually has the opportunity, can actually buy an NFT today. And you are super, super early.
Wow. I think right now we're seeing so many 2021 projects on a daily basis. And we kind of look at it as not historically significant today. But what about in 20 years from now? How do you think the 2021 projects, because this right now, I would say is the true revolution of NFTs, where the mass majority, not the mass majority, but more so the early adopters like me and you are kind of jumping in. Do you hold any 2021 projects? Do you find value in 2021 projects? What's your thoughts behind that compared to the earlier projects and moving forward?
Sure. I do hold some. And I tell you, I hold some because friends tell me to buy them.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't even know what I have. I have like lions and I don't even know, monkeys and bears. I don't know. Yeah. Right. And I simply buy them because friends of mine who are on Twitter Spaces or whatever, who I'm hanging out with, are like, go buy some of these. Right. So I do it as a community mechanism. I build community by saying, okay, I'll buy some whatever buzzed bears. Let's do it. Right. And so I do it to create a deeper sense of community with other people who I like and am friends with. But I think the ones that are able to kind of generate those communities that we're talking about right now are going to hold the long-term value. Obviously, we've seen it with apes. Apes is like the alpha, and everybody's trying to do something similar to that. But it's really hard to do. Really, really, really hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, apes has become like a membership club in a sense.
Yeah. And it's so hard. I mean, from a business perspective, I've run businesses my whole life. Like, it's so hard to do. It's super impressive what they've done. Very, very difficult to do. So you try to find ones like that. And obviously you ape in at the beginning and then you're kind of just taking a flyer hoping it happens. You know, people are like, I'd say, look, if you're doing that, for example, if you buy the latest, I don't know what was the one of the day was toads, right? Mm-hmm. You buy the toad one, you have a chance to build that community. I mean, so many people hit me up too. Like, why aren't you tweeting about this? Why aren't you talking about it? I'm like, dude, why aren't you talking about it? You're the one who bought the bags. Yeah. Talk about it. Build the community, dude. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
You have the same opportunity as I do, dude. I mean, I may have more followers than you. Yeah. But dude, all it takes is first you tell your friend, and then he tells another friend. I mean, this is word of mouth. Either you want to build the community or not. If you just want somebody to pump your bags so you can get out, well, guess what? That community is going to die, right? You have to be engaged and want that community to succeed long term. And if you do that, you might have something.
Oh, man, I love that, Adam. That's probably the most valuable thing you said. And I hope that doesn't go over anybody's head. I'm excited about that, Adam. This was absolutely phenomenal. You dropped a ton of gems. I hope we're able to do this sometime in the near future. Hope you have a phenomenal day. And I guess we could tune out.